Welcome to my video demonstrating how I change the tyres on my motorcycle, and for the purposes of today's demonstration I'm going to use the front wheel of my BMW S1000. The tyre is original, it's done just a shade under 5,000 miles. Before we start I'll just go over the equipment that I intend to use. First is this bench, which I made myself, and quite frankly wouldn't have bothered had I known that there was a commercially available bead breaker. If you look on the internet and Google it, and I'll put a link to this in the video, there's a bead breaker made for motorcycle tyres made by Sealey. At the time I made this I wasn't aware that it existed. Had I known I would have just bought one of those. I like the way it works because rather than using a lever which when the bead breaks, it breaks suddenly and you can end up with damage. It's a screw thread and you screw it down and the shovel just gradually depresses the bead until the bead breaks. It's a lot more controlled. And I've watched a video that's being used on YouTube and I really like it. Having said that, I'm using this now in conjunction with this dirty great big 12-inch G-clamp and my own bespoke shovel that I made, which is just a piece of wood which is cut at the correct radius so that it fits against the rim, and it's got a shelved bottom to it so that it sits square when it's on the actual rim. I made 3 holes in it because I was initially intending to use 3 G-clamps, but when I actually got the thing made up I realised that the G-clamp I got wouldn't fit, and so I made this contraption that fits in one big hole and then the big 12-inch G-clamp pushes down on that. Okay, so the other things you'll need are a number of zip ties, cable ties, call them what you will. These look about 2 foot long. A couple of ratchet straps and some webbing to strap the tyre down, strap the wheel down onto the bench. Some rim protectors, not entirely necessary but I like to use them as a belt and braces. Some duct tape, sellotape and wheel weights. Now most wheel weights that you can get now are steel. And I don't like them because the problem with the steel weights is that it's more difficult to cut small pieces off them if you're trying to be really fussy about the wheel balance. And the other issue with them is that they don't tend to bend, and so when you stick the weight onto the wheel it will bridge across the curve of the wheel so that the weight will only really stick at one end and the other, and it doesn't stick down fully in the middle here, and you do find that they're more inclined to come off, whereas with lead you can push it down in the middle and it bends so easily that it conforms to the shape of the wheel, so much more satisfactory in my mind. A bit more difficult to get hold of, but you can get them, and I've got, for me at least, about 50 years supply of the things, so I don't have to worry on that score. And then the final other piece of kit that you need is a wheel balance, and again these are commercially available, 40-50 quid on eBay. Actually I just ended up buying the bearings and a spindle, and then I just knocked this thing up out of wood. Saved a few quid and it works well. So without further ado we'll get on. The other thing is that I forgot to mention tyre paste. Now I don't use washing up liquid simply because you've got to be very careful not to leave a residue. It's alright to use it for taking the tyre off, but you don't want to be mounting your tyre with washing up liquid, because when it dries it leaves salts which can cause corrosion. So this stuff, professionally available tyre paste, it's only about 15 quid for, I've got about 50 years supply of that as well, because you use the smallest amount each time you do it. So that's that. Right, now this wheel hasn't been prepared in any way at all. The hole in the middle of the bench, self-explanatory, it's to allow the disc to sit down through the middle. and then the bench itself is covered in carpet tiles so that it doesn't scratch the rim at all. So the first thing to do is to let the air out. Now when you're breaking the bead, you clamp the shovel down onto the tyre. There's a lot of force, and so I do strap the wheel down on the opposite side. Okay, we're good to go. Tied down the far side, being careful not to let these straps go through the disc, because I don't want, if there's any force making it pull up, you don't want to be putting any force on the disc. So that strap is completely free of the disc. Bit of sellotape along the rim to protect it from any scratches, and then I push this rim protector over as well. So we'll put this in place and we'll go for it and see what happens. Now, as I say, this process would be a lot easier, I'm sure, with the commercially available Sealey Bead Breaker. I wouldn't use it as it comes because it needs mounting on a piece of wood, and then the far side where the wheel rests could also do with a block of wood for the wheel to rest on, but fundamentally a lot easier to use than this. But this works. Now, I've done tyres from 120s up to 190s. I think 200 would be the limit for this. One thing I can also say is that sports wheels, sports tyres, being a softer rubber, tend to be easier to do. So this is a relatively soft tyre, this one. So in theory it should be a bit easier than the tyre that came off my Triumph Tiger. That said, it's not particularly warm, so the rubber's probably a bit harder than it might otherwise be. But let's go for it and see how we get on. Unfortunately, it does have a tendency to want to go at an angle. This thing doesn't like staying straight, so you've got to get it absolutely right. That's it. We're still on target. Did you hear it go slightly? I think that's got it. Now, at this point in time, it doesn't hurt to put a bit of tyre cement in there just to lube it, but I think it's gone already, so I don't think I'm going to need to. Okay, and once it's gone like this, it doesn't hurt just to push it off by hand. That's it, it's gone. And the far side as well. That's it. Right, we can release it now. Now you see what I mean about it's more controlled. If you're using a lever and the bead suddenly goes, the lever can go down and the whole shooting match can go, but more of a worry is that the shovel can get pushed into the wheel, and before you know it, you've ended up with a scratch in your rim. Now, I just need to break the bead all the way around before we turn the wheel over. Oh, this rubber is really quite stiff when it's cold. Some people suggest warming it with an air gun, a heat gun. I wouldn't, it's a waste of time. I think by the time you've gone over here with your heat gun, it's cooled off over here. So if you're that worried about the rubber being pliable, best thing to do is leave it until the weather gets warmer and do it outside and leave the tyre in the sun for a while, but it's perfectly doable. It's freezing outside at the moment. Okay, so that's done. I'm going to turn it over and we'll break the bead on the other side. Okay, I've turned the wheel over, strapped it down on the far side, again making sure that the straps don't incorporate the disc. A little bit of sellotape on there, over the top maybe, just acts as a bit of a rim protector. Slide my plastic rim protector in place. God, I tell you, these tyres are stiff as hell. Right, that's it. That's in. Before I proceed, I have made a note, made sure that I know where the rotational markings are on the wheel, because these things are directional, and they're on the S1000, they're there, and I've just double checked to make sure that they are in alignment with the ones on the tyre. So of course once this comes off, I need to make sure that the new tyre goes on in the correct direction of rotation. So let's have another struggle, see how we get on. So put my wedge on the tyre and need to unwind my clamp. Okie dokie. Right, here goes. Now the Sealey Bead Breaker does work in the same way. You've got a handle, screws round and a shovel, but the wheel itself just rests on a steel bar, which frankly I think it's rubber coated from what I can remember. It's got a rubber pad on it, but the problem is you're at an angle because the far side of the wheel is going to rest on the ground and there's nothing holding it down, which means it could flip up. And the other problem is, of course, the steel bar that the wheel rests on the Sealey bit of kit is only probably looks to be about an inch high, which means that the disc is potentially going to make contact with the ground. It's all a bit unsatisfactory. But the fundamentals of the kit look very good, but you'd need to ideally mount it on a wooden kind of tray and then a couple of blocks of wood that the wheel can rest on, so that when the wheel is in position ready to screw down, everything's square. Well, that would be my take on it anyway. That you can see it being used on YouTube. There's one guy using it. It's not wanting to go straight. You've got to get the clamp at exactly the right angle, otherwise it doesn't want to come down straight. About that. Yeah, I think that's how to do it. Nope. Okay, let's try that. Oh, that's better, that's coming down more square. If you don't get the G-clamp the right distance in at the bottom, the whole thing wants to either cant out or cant in, and ideally you want it coming down straight without having to use an awful lot of effort to hold it there. That looks about right. So a little bit at a time. Oh, you can hear it creaking, it's going to go. Has that gone? Yeah, it's gone. Okay, that's gone. So you can take that off. Now this block, there's nothing fancy about it. It kind of looks carbon fibre. That's only because I do a little bit of carbon fibre work and I was teaching myself how to do it, and I thought what better way than to try laminating this in carbon fibre. So just basically bare wood would be absolutely fine, but I was kind of prattling around and decided to laminate it with some carbon fibre. Likewise, it's got an acetyl kind of section there to prevent it scratching the wheel, but again totally unnecessary because you can just use one of these, a rim protector. Okay, the next phase of this is to clamp the beads of the tyre together. Now the standard zip tie method uses zip ties to clamp them together, and then you pull the tyre up into the drop centre in the 6 o'clock position and pull the tyre off at the top. All sounds very easy. It is a bit of a trial, if I'm honest, but I've found myself anyway that the zip ties are all well and good to get the thing started, but they do take up a fair bit of space. You know, these are about 2 mils wide and you're tight when you're pulling it over, and really any additional reduction in the diameter of the tyre makes it more difficult. And so what I tend to do, rather than using zip ties, I certainly get the thing started with zip ties, but then wrap duct tape around the tyre to hold the beads in position, and that seems to work a lot better. But again, all will become clear. So the next job is to put 4 zip ties around the tyre, one here, one here, one here and one here. Now because I'm on my own, I find it easier to do it with the wheel upright and squash the tyre with my knees. Right, here goes. So, there we go, squash that with my fingers. The first couple can be a bit tight. Come on, you sod. That's got it. Right, so now having got it through like that, squish this as hard as you can and tighten it up. Okay. Right, having done that, we're going to do one opposite it, and hopefully this will go a little bit easier. Again. Squash the tyre with my hands, get it flat. There we go, much easier. Okay, want to be roughly offset. Squash the tyre absolutely flat and pull that tight. Right. And then we want to do the 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock positions. Zip tie in. Right, now you can see already how loose that tyre is on the rim. Now, with the wheel back on the bench, you can see that with the beads strapped together, it's starting to be a little bit loose on the rim. And the conventional method calls for zip ties every 15 or 20 degrees or so, which brings all the beads together, and then you, with plenty of tyre paste, plenty of lubricant, push the tyre up into the drop centre and then pull it off on the opposite side. Now, you're not stretching the tyre to do this, that's not possible, but you are kind of distorting it and pulling it into an oval, and that gives you the clearance that you need to pull it off at the top. But the problem is, obviously, these zip ties, cable ties, reduce the effective inside diameter of the tyre. So not only have you got to get the tyre over, you've also got to get that additional reduction in diameter pulled over due to the cable ties, and that's why I tend to use duct tape. It doesn't sound like a lot, but when it's as tight as it is, that extra couple of millimetres makes all the difference. So what I'm going to do now is go back to the same position where I was a minute ago, standing, and with the tyre in between my knees, go round and apply duct tape. And I'll show one being done, and then I'll do the rest off camera. Okay, I'm going to put my first duct tie strap just to one side of a cable tie, and I make these up using 2 strips of duct tape back to back with one sticky end. And the idea is that this threads through the tyre on the underside, so that when I pull it free, it comes out without sticking. But also, by doubling it up, it makes it stronger. I have found that just by using one piece of duct tape, unless you go around several times, it's not strong enough. So, here goes. And this should feed through really easily, which it has done. And then pull it round as far as I can. And then I think I'm going to get in the way of the camera here, probably. Squeeze it together really tight, pull the duct tape tight and stick it on. Right, okie doke. And then the next one I'm going to do midway between that cable tie and this one. Okay, I made up a second strap, so let's try this one and see how we get on. This one's going to go about here. So we want to feed it through. Let's squash this together first. That's got it. Feed that to about there. Right, pull that really tight as fast as you can, and stick it down. Okay, right, so I'm going to take this off camera, but I'm going to put one at each zip tie and then an intermediate position. Okay, so that's got all my straps on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One thing I didn't make clear, another reason for doubling them up is because if you don't have a tacky surface of the strap in contact with the tyre, it makes it a lot easier to pull through and then subsequently tension. Obviously, if the sticky side of the tape is sticking onto the bead, then it becomes much more difficult to tension it. So the next job is to get a screwdriver and prise these zip ties off. They're not the reusable ones, but in actual fact, because they're so big, they're relatively easy. Just get a tip of a screwdriver in there, prise the thing apart, and then just pull them off. So I'll do that now. Of course, you don't have to do this, you can just cut them off if you want, but I'm as tight as a duck's backside, and so I like to use them again. Actually, in truth, I just don't like wasting the thought of things going into landfill. So if they can be used again, why not? That's it. Okay, that's got all the cable ties off, and with the beads strapped together with the duct tape, you can see how loose it is. But this part now is fundamentally the most difficult part, I think, of the whole procedure, and that is what you have to do is push the tyre up into the drop centre, and because I'm doing this job on my own, I strap it in position. So I'll put a ratchet strap around that and hold it into the drop centre tightly, and that will give me a reasonable amount of clearance at the top here, but still not enough to get it over. So the other thing that I tend to do is put a ratchet strap around the entire equator of the tyre to squash it so that it goes into the drop centre here on the 3 and 9 o'clock position. Now, with it being pushed in here and pushed in this position, it should give me the clearance that I require here. Albeit I'll need plenty of lube, so this is the point where you put plenty of duct tape on, and as I say, they can come off quite easily, and they can be a bit of a struggle. Hopefully this will come off more easily, because if anyone's watching this video who fancies doing this job themselves and they're a budding DIY tyre changer and they watch this dude on YouTube who sweats more than Prince Andrew during an Exocet attack or such like, then it's going to put you off. So hopefully not. Hopefully this is going to come off easily. But I'll get the thing prepped and then I'll switch the camera back on. Now I've got the first ratchet strap on, and it's not that tight, it doesn't need to be tight, it just needs to be secure enough to make sure it doesn't come out of the drop centre. And at this stage I'm going to put plenty of tyre paste around the rim. So we'll get on with that. And you don't want to be skimping on this stuff, because I think this is really very much the key to it. Plenty on the tyre and plenty on the rim itself. Now obviously we only need it on this side, there's no point putting any on the other side. I don't know what this stuff is. I think it seems water based though, because it comes off with a wet rag, and they call this tyre wax, but there seems to be different types that you can get. But anyway, put a bit more on. Of course the main area is here, where it's going to come off first, up the top there. Right, that's done. So the next thing is to put a ratchet strap, all around the 3 and 9 o'clock. Now, a couple of points here. The purists will say, but you're putting tension on the disc. It's not going to be pulled tight. Just tight enough really to collapse the tyre a little bit, just to give me that little bit of extra clearance at the 12 and 9 o'clock. Now the other thing, of course, is if it's too tight, I won't be able to pull it off here anyway, because the ratchet strap will be holding the tyre in this position. And then as soon as I get to a point where it's wanting to come off, if this strap is stopping it, I'll release the ratchet, and then hopefully it will come off. It did occur to me actually to make some kind of bar with a couple of vice clamps on that will squash the tyre in, and it's just over the top, in which case it will stay in position and you just pull it straight off. So I might do that at some point, but this seems to work okay. So I'll go off camera while I put the other strap on. Okay, there we have it. This strap is pulling the drop centre, the bead into the drop centre at the 3 and 9 o'clock position, this one in the 6 o'clock position. Not particularly tight, so it's not going to do any damage to anything, it's just enough to distort the tyre and get it in. And that's hopefully going to give me enough clearance to get it off at the top. As I say, this is potentially the most difficult part. I need to get on top of it so I can apply my weight to it. So I'm going to put it on the floor and I'll be back as soon as I get the whole thing set up again. This sometimes goes well and other times much more difficult to get it off. Anyway, plenty of paste. We're pulled into the 6 o'clock here. We're pulled into the 3 and 9 o'clock here. I've worked out how to quickly release this so that once this comes up a certain amount, I can release the tension and get it off the rest of the way. So, here we go, let's give it a go. It's getting into a suitable position where I can apply force to it. Actually, let's just put a glove on there so I can't be bothered to put my overalls on, don't want to get grease on my trousers. Right, so I'm not leaning on the speed ring at all, it's purely my knees on the centre there. And then we give that a good pull, you can see that starting to come. Come on, you sod. Right, that's off enough that it's not going to go back, I don't think. I think we can take this strap off now. That's it. Just getting ready to take it and stand it up. Might be easier now, actually, thinking about it. Get the bench out of the way. Now I know the easy way would be use tyre levers, but one of the purposes of doing this is to avoid tyre levers at all costs. I'm just not very keen on them. Come on, you sod. Drawback of being 62. Here we come, it's coming, here we come. Oh, thank God for that. There we go. With the tyre off, you can see how the straps hold the beads together on the tyre. Anyway, right, the next job is to just literally clean all the wax off, clean the wheel up, and then get it prepped for balancing, because what I like to do is balance the wheel without a tyre on temporarily, then put the new tyre on and seat it and inflate it, and then put it back on the balance and let it settle. And obviously with the wheel having been balanced, the tyre, the combination will settle with the heaviest point at the bottom, which by definition will be the heaviest point of the tyre. And then the next job then is to break the bead again, rotate the tyre around until the heaviest point on the tyre is coincident with where I put the temporary leads for the wheel. when it was balanced without the tyre, take the whole shooting match off in terms of lead, and then rebalance the combination, and that way you'll end up with the least quantity of lead. That's the theory. When this bike was new, funnily enough, it had no lead on either the front or back. Okay, I've cleaned the wheel up, and one thing I have done is cleaned and polished the entire inside surface here. You tend to get a lot of build-up of rubber on the rim here, and it's difficult to see because it's a black wheel, but my Triumph Tiger had silver wheels, and you get a lot of caked on rubber and stuff, which is clearly going to make removing the tyre at subsequent on occasions more difficult. So this job then is to put some temporary balance on the wheel to get this balanced prior to fitting the new tyre. And I've got a number of used leads here of various different weights, which I'll just sellotape onto the rim temporarily. Okay, I didn't show the process because it's not exactly exciting. It's taken hardly any lead at all to balance. 4 grams, that's all. Unbelievable. My Triumph Tiger and Speed Triple wheels were much further out of balance than that. I don't know whether it's a good thing or not. It depends obviously on how much out of balance the new tyre is. And the tyre I bought is a Michelin Pilot Power 2CT. So the next job then is to get this strapped up. I'll probably see if I can resurrect some of the straps I made to take the other tyre off. Get this strapped up, get it lubed up, and then actually putting this onto the wheel is a lot easier, believe it or not, than taking the other one off, which is probably no bad thing. Stick that one there. Now you need to squash it hard enough to make sure the beads are definitely together, which they are. Pull it really tight and take it up. Yeah, they're together, look. So go all the way around and do the whole thing. So let's get another strap. Okay, so that's the tyre strapped up, and you can see how the beads are tight up against each other. So the next job will be, obviously I need to be careful to check the direction of rotation, but the face that's getting pushed down onto the wheel, plenty of tyre lube on it, and the surface of the tyre that's going to be taking the surface of the wheel that's going to be taking the tyre, plenty of lube on the edge. And then starting at the 6 o'clock position, kneel on the tyre and push it all the way around, no straps necessary. They tend to go on fairly easily. Okay, I'm applying some Tyre Paste to the outer edge of the bead here, so that when I do subsequently break the beads again, it will, as I said a minute ago, it will break easier. That's the theory. Whether it does or not is another matter. Okay, so I'll work my way around. I'm not putting any on the inside edge of the rim here, because that's obviously doesn't help me mounting the tyre anyway, or breaking the bead, and it's where the tyre grips onto the wheel. Right, that's been all the way around. I'll do the rest with a brush. So we're pushing on this way, so we want plenty of paste on this edge here. And there's no point in putting any. Quite often you see people putting it on both sides of the tyre, both sides of the wheel, sorry, which strikes me as being a bit unnecessary, a bit redundant. Okay, right, now check the rotation. The rotation is, let's just double check. The arrow is so faint you can hardly see it. Where the hell's it gone? Oh yeah, there we go. Anti-clockwise. And if the tyre goes on that away, that's anti-clockwise as well. So we want to put plenty of paste on this side. So okay, job's good. About the tyre paste, I've not made a dent in it, that will last me forever. Right, okay, one final check. Tyre is definitely going wheel is definitely going anti-clockwise, tyre is going anti-clockwise. Right, so you want to start in the 6 o'clock position here, and then just push it gradually round. There we go. There we are, we're on. Right, the next job then is to take the straps off and then to seat the bead. Now I find to seat the bead, it's dead easy in actual fact. Just manoeuvre the tyre and manipulate it as far as you can so that the beads of the tyre are pressing against the inner edge of the rim, and then just gently, using a hand foot pump. You find it might hiss a little bit for the first few pumps, but then when it seals a little bit, once it's got a seal and it pushes out, then that's it. And also, having lubricated the beads and the tyre on this side, they don't generally go with a big bang. You don't want to be going much above 25-30 psi. I heard 40 psi was kind of the limit. If you start getting above that, then you need to let the air out. Well, yeah, let the air out and re-lubricate the beads again. But I find when I do it, quite often they'll seat at 15 psi, no problem. So we'll get on and do that. Now then, first things first is just move the tyre around and give it a squeeze and make sure that it's central in the wheel all the way around. Now I'm going to put the valve at the bottom, and obviously if you do have a compressor, the rush of air is much more likely to work than a foot pump. The problem with a foot pump, you're putting air in so gently that even the smallest leak will prevent it from building pressure for the beads to seat, but I found it works more often than not. Sometimes the problem is that the weight of the wheel pushing down on the tyre here can create an air gap between the beads here at the top. If it does, I'll try putting it on the bench, but for now it's easier maybe just to do it with it standing up. So let's see how we get on. We'll soon know. Right, here goes. Doesn't seem to be building any pressure. Try and hold it. Nope. Well, I don't know. Oh, I don't know. I think it might be. Actually. Let's keep going. Yes, that is. It's just not registering any pressure on the dial. Still not registering any pressure, but It's definitely pumping up. You'll hear the beads go any moment. Oh yeah, here we go. 10 psi, so it is filling up. There we go. Has it gone on the other side? No, there's an area on the other side where it hasn't gone yet. Whatever you do, don't put your fingers in there. Keep your fingers well away from the beads until they're seated. All the way up to 20. There we go, cool. My temporary lead, which you can see there, is still in position, all 4 grams of it. So let's put this sucker back on the balance and see what's going on. The bottom is there. I'll be really anal, put one on both sides just in case it decides to come off while I'm faffing with it. This doesn't have to be dead accurate because at the end of the day the final balance is still to come anyway. Right, okay, off that comes. So the next job is to break the beads and spin it round until those 2 positions match. Hopefully, I haven't got too far to go. Where is it? Oh, bugger. It would be, wouldn't it? It's 180 degrees out. Right then, proof of the pudding. If it keeps pivoting up into the air, I won't have any choice. But I'm rather hoping that having put the tyre paste on the bead, this is going to pop easily. I've let the air out, so we're good to go. Oops, this needs unwinding. You get a feel for when the bottom of the G-clamp's in the right position. That's going to... Oh, I can see it starting to come up already. Bugger. Please, please don't. Yeah, that crap, the bead's gone already. Just goes to show, doesn't it, how easy that was. That went really easily. I thought it might. I was certainly hoping it would. There we go. Turn it over and do the other side, and then rotate it around, and the proof of the pudding, let's see how much lead this thing's going to take. I'm hoping against hope that it won't need any. I think that's a bit of a tall order, but you never know. Right, I've got the wheel turned over and we'll break the opposite bead. Okay. Okay, that was good. There you go. Broken the bead already. How easy was that? Just goes to show, doesn't it? Get the lube in the right place. It just gives up just like that. Right, that's the lead there, and this is the heaviest part of the tyre here, so I've got quite a long way to go. Can't believe it. The last time I did this on another one, it was an absolute pain. This is just spinning around like nobody's business. There we go. So we've got the lightest part of the wheel by definition, opposite the heaviest part of the tyre, and so all I need to do now is take these bits of tape off, although actually just for interest's sake, so that we've got a point of reference, I'll leave one on, you never know, put it on the top, well out of the way of the beads, and then take my piece of temporary lead off as well, along with my tape that's on the rim there. That's all off. Right, now, don't want to spin it at all from here, do we? But what we do want to do is reseat the beads. No, it's not capturing any air yet. Let's just make sure it's sitting centrally. Yeah, if in certain places it's already over the bead like that, that will stop it because it means that it will be asymmetric in another position. Oh, and there. Yeah. Okay. Right. Try again. Nope. Didn't you know it? Let's just try taking the weight off it and see if that does it. Yeah, that's done it. So there you go, it was the weight of the wheel pressing on the beads at the bottom, creating an air gap at the top. The moment you lift it up, and I seem to remember that's what happened the first time as well. I lifted it up and it sealed it. Anyway, right, here we go. 5 psi. One. Oh, two, bloody hell. As I say, don't want your fingers anywhere near that. And that went, just to give you an idea, 15 psi. So if yours hasn't gone by 40, which I believe is really the upper limit, then you don't want to keep going. You just haven't got enough lube. Okay, I finished the balancing, and it took exactly 5 grams. Now, unlike most commercial places where you get your wheels balanced, they only do it to the nearest 5, and so possibly they might not put any weight on it at all. But I've got lead weights here, 0.5 gram, 1 gram, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and what I do is I keep adding lead until the wheel, when it's static, definitely wants to slowly go one way, and then reduce the weight until it slowly wants to go the other way, and then take an average and it comes out at 5. So I will put 5 gram lead weight on there, but I'm pleased with that. It's a good result. And for anyone that's interested in doing your own tyre changes, yeah, the only part of it that's a bit fraught is having taped up the tyre, getting the original tyre off. And I didn't want to use tyre levers. I've seen so many videos of people doing this job where they say, oh, I do my own tyres, and then you watch them as they mangle the hell out of their rims using tyre levers. And I specifically didn't want to do that, so I don't want to be using the things. If you're skilled with them, not a problem, but I'm not, and knowing me, I'd have a slip up and I'd gouge a big chunk out of my wheel. So the only modification I'm planning on making is when I'm taking the tyre off, putting the webbing strap around the wheel. I'm not happy with that because it does put a little bit of pressure on the disc, but very, very little, to be honest with you, not enough to cause any problems. But the main issue is it actually stops the wheel from seating properly in the bench. I mean, that bench I've made has got a hole in it that the disc goes through, and of course if there's a strap going around the disc, it stops it seating in it properly. And I don't know whether people noticed in the video, but the wheel, when I was trying to pull the tyre off, it did creep out of the central well somewhat. So the plan there is just to have a bar with a couple of cross pieces on, with an adjustable screw ratchet that will screw on to the tyre at 3 and 9 o'clock from one side, compress it onto the drop centre, and then of course when you're pulling it off here, there's no straps restraining the tyre, and I think it will make it easy to come off anyway. So before I do my next one, that's what I plan to do. But ultimately it's not that difficult, and it's quite a rewarding job to do because you can take your time doing it. And then the only other thing is, don't stick your old tyre in a farmer's hedge somewhere. Make sure you dispose of it properly. Most council tips these days won't take tyres. Some still do, but most won't. So you can stock up a few in your shed, wait until you've got half a dozen, and then just go down to the local tyre and battery place, slip one of the techs a couple of beers, and they'll take them off you quite happily. But don't put them in your rubbish, don't put them under a farmer's hedge somewhere. It's depressing when you see people throwing old tyres away. Dispose of your rubbish responsibly. And that's about it. Hope you enjoyed the video.